Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name is of course Csaw or Chris, and today we're finally talking about World of Warcraft. Now, it's been a really long time since I've specifically covered WoW on this channel. You've probably seen it crop up in some of the recent MMO comparison videos, but it's been a while since I've done a WoW exclusive, and there's a lot of reasons for this, but the biggest one is that I haven't played WoW by itself for a really long time. I took a break from the game about near the release of the last kind of raid tier in BFA. I dropped out of the game and pursued other MMO interests is what I'll say on my resume. But that's, you know, kind of typical for me. I think it's very common for World of Warcraft players and generally MMO players to leave after the last tier of an MMO expansion comes out. That's just kind of the resting point where people go and find something new to do and refresh themselves a bit. Now, that being said, don't get me wrong, BFA had a whole bunch of problems with it. It definitely was not my most enjoyable play session of World of Warcraft, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that are like, really? You're gonna check out World of Warcraft again? How many times are you gonna get burnt? Well, apparently, one more time at least. But yeah, so Shadowlands, lots of exciting stuff. This video is kind of about Shadowlands, but it's more about the level-squish. And this is something that's actually out there in the game right now, and it's not necessarily a Shadowlands exclusive feature as it doesn't come with the expansion, but it is probably one of the biggest features that's being released around the expansion. And when I say big, I mean this is probably one of the biggest decisions that Blizzard has ever made. Like, you know, except for releasing classic WoW, this is a pretty big change because we're breaking the rules of MMOs. The rules of vertical progression MMOs is that you always get stronger. You go up in levels, you go up in power. That's just how things work. We've seen stat squishes before, which just kind of compresses the numbers that people are doing, which is good, but this is actually taking the levels and reducing it. So, you know, if you played in BFA and you were 120, you're now going to be 50 when you come back to the game, and eventually 60 when Shadowlands comes out. So it's a pretty big change, and it has a lot of implications for the game. So we're going to talk about the pros and the cons to this level squish, and to be fully transparent, I think this is overall a good decision for the game. There's more pros in my mind than there are cons, but I do want to touch on both sides because I think it's good with any change in the game to look at both sides of it. So the very first thing, and this is what really impacted a lot of my friends that I play World of Warcraft with, is that the game used to be very intimidating, specifically for returning players or new players. When you tell them that they have to go through 120 levels before they can really do stuff with you, they're like, it's really nice to say, you know, hey, you just have to do 50 levels or you just have to do 60 levels, and it's a lot quicker of a leveling experience. Now, this is kind of a double-edged blade because some people really enjoy the leveling and they're sad that it's going to be shorter now. And you might be thinking, what? Who enjoys leveling? Well, it's definitely a part of an MMO, right? If we go back to our fond memories of our youth, some of the best times when you're learning a game and enjoying it is the leveling process, because there's all those opportunities to make mistakes and not have everyone be furious with you. Now, don't get me wrong, in World of Warcraft, you can join the first dungeon at like level 10 and have people be furious at you anyways, but there's typically more room for errors at a lower level. The other really big thing, and this really touches on new players, there's a new starting zone and a new character customization screen. It's so sleek when you go into World of Warcraft now. Maybe not as sleek as some of the newest games on the newest engines, but in terms of what their game used to have to what the game has now, we're talking next level. The character customization looks really nice. You can go through the different classes and they'll kind of jump at you and show some of their flashy skills. There's a lot more options for the actual character customization itself. Now, to be fair, it's not evenly distributed. Some of the races got lucky and some of them not so lucky, so you have to see if your favorite race actually has some new looks or not, but that's completely fine. They've done a lot of work with it, and there's a lot of different options you have to play with. When you go into the game, you're also greeted with a choice to either either go to the original starting area of that race or to the new starting area called Exile's Reach. Now, if you're a brand new player, you'll have to do the Exile's Reach, which is cool. It kind of teaches players how to play an MMO, WASD to walk, those kind of things. It's a little bit irritating to go there if you are a veteran MMO player, and I think particularly the fact that you have to fight against the tooltips the whole time can get kind of rough. For instance, if you go there and you're an experienced player and you're going to be wearing heirlooms, well, every single time the game gives you a new piece of gear, it wants you to go into your bag and equip it, and if you have heirlooms on, they're going to be and you're not going to want to equip the items, they're going to get pretty mad at you. There's going to be a struggle where the bag open sort of tip stays on your screen, and you'll see that throughout my footage. It just kind of stays there. The actual character I'm going through, though, I did it again on a warrior without heirlooms, and it went a lot better. So if you are a new character, it runs a lot smoother, but if you're someone who's kind of trying to brute force your way through it, you might get irritated with some of the systems, but that's okay. I think it's better to err on the cautious side of things and make sure people are equipping what they should equip. The other big thing to talk about is the free trial. Now, World of Warcraft has had a free trial where you can play up to level 20 for a really long time. And before now, that kind of sucked, because level 20 out of 120 really was just the very tip of the iceberg for gameplay. However, that has not changed with the level squish. And so all of a sudden, level 20 out of level 50, or level 60 as it will be when Shadowlands comes out, is all of a sudden a much better deal. You get to experience a lot of what the game has to offer while paying nothing. So I think it's a really cool way for people who have never tried the game before, or maybe want to try the game after a long time, to dip their feet in there and see what everything's like. The other really big thing is that the levels themselves feel way better. Back when you used to go from 1 to 120, you'd have these long periods of time where you wouldn't get a skill or you wouldn't get a talent point, and you'd just be getting level after level. And yeah, it's cool to just get levels, but it's really rewarding when you're leveling and next level you're going to get this really cool skill you've been waiting for, or you get to choose a talent or a PvP talent. Well, now the game feels so fresh. It feels like every couple levels you're getting something. Almost every level it feels like there's something big to unlock. There's certainly bigger levels, like level 30 or level 40, you'll get a specific talent tree or something like that. But on the whole, I'd say the leveling progression and the way the system feels much better distributed. There's something to be excited about the whole time you're leveling. And speaking of excitement while leveling, we need to talk about chromie time. Chromie time is one of the biggest solutions to the problem of WoW leveling from the past. And the big issue for people in the past was that you'd enter an expansion and you'd kind of have the choice between two different expansions now. You'd hit level 60 and you'd be able to choose, either Burning Crusade or the Wrath of the Lich King, and then you'd get barely into one of the zones, and then you'd all of a sudden have to go to the next area. And you really wouldn't get to engage with any of the past content. And there was so much content in WoW that just wasn't being used. It was just being blown past on people's way to max level. Now, you choose chromie time and you choose one of the past expansions to level the whole way through. And this doesn't mean you'll necessarily complete the entire expansion's worth of content, but it does mean you're going to get a lot further through the game that you might have otherwise. So for instance, if you were to go and pick, Wrath of the Lich King, you could go and start doing your quests and stuff in the northern area, and you can go through multiple different zones now as opposed to just getting partway through the first zone. In addition to this, you also get to do the Wrath of the Lich King dungeons. Now, this is going to be our first sort of con to the system. At the current state in the game, when you select one of the chromie time paths, you're only able to queue for those specific dungeons. So you're only able to queue for the Wrath of the Lich King dungeons if you're trying to queue for a dungeon. I believe there are some specific rules if you're grouped with someone else who is also doing a different chromie time path. There's also different things that happen if you're queued as a DPS and you've been in the Wrath of the Lich King dungeon queue for 15 minutes, I believe, is the cutoff. After that, you're all of a sudden expanded to all of the dungeons. And this is really in case there are certain chromie time paths where there are no people going through it. So it does kind of have these systems in place to expand things, but it would be nice if this is something that the player themselves could choose right away. I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing to restrict the dungeon selection. I do get the point because they're trying to make it as immersive as possible, but I think it's hiding content from the player and making the game less enjoyable overall. And although this system might have a few issues for the dungeons, the battleground side of things is doing really well with the level squish. Even before the level squish, things had gotten pretty cool through leveling PvP because the sort of grouping for battles had been expanded to include a much larger range of levels. This paired with the level squish has made it super accessible to do battlegrounds, and specifically the queue for battlegrounds with your friends, which I think is ultimately one of the best parts of World of Warcraft's leveling system, is how much battlegrounds and PvP in general plays a part in the leveling process. To paint a picture, World of Warcraft kind of has two different battleground queues. You have either the normal battlegrounds or the epic battlegrounds. The epic ones are just kind of your longer battlegrounds, like you'd have Isle of Conquest, you'd have Wintergrasp in there, Ashran, like a few of the bigger, longer battlegrounds would be in there. And before all of these changes, I would never be able to get an epic battleground to pop, like the queue to pop, while I was leveling. However, since the changes, since the level squish, I've been able to regularly get into one of these in about 5 to 10 minutes. I'd say the average is like 7 minutes, which is quite quick for most games. And then for normal battlegrounds, which includes, capture the flag and those kind of game modes, it's like 2 or 3 minutes, and it's never even like up to 5 minutes. It's so quick to get into battlegrounds. Now, are there issues with the battlegrounds? Yes, there are certain times when I get in there and one of the enemy team is just like spawn camping another team, but that also happened before all this, so you can't fix everything in one night. It's just really nice to have that level of accessibility to a feature of the game that's so fun to do, specifically for groups of friends. This does also lead to kind of one of the other cons of the system, is when you are getting down-leveled to, say, play with your lower-level friend in Battlegrounds, you'll see that you have all these skills unlocked, but you won't be able to use them. And people from Final Fantasy XIV will kind of be used to this system, where you would go into lower-level dungeons, and all of a sudden you're not able to use some of your class skills. And it can be, like, it's one of the better ways to balance the game, because there are certain skills that are just so powerful that they need to be locked behind a higher level. It just can be frustrating for people who perhaps the class doesn't work as well without a certain skill, and seeing it, just on your bar with a little lock on it and being grayed out, you're like, dang it, I wish I could play that. Or if you're just so used to it and your muscle memory goes to it, but it's not actually going to do anything for you, it can be quite frustrating. So there are little things like that sometimes feel worse. I think overall, though, the level squish has been a huge benefit to the game. The biggest one that I haven't talked about, and this is kind of just from my own personal perspective, is the fact that we're hitting much smaller numbers now. And I'm one of those people that, when the game was in kind of Legion, I think was the worst example for me. The damage numbers were so big that they had less of a meaningful impact on what I was seeing. So when I saw damage that was just so big and DPS that was so big and hundreds of thousands and the millions, I didn't really notice the little changes that a piece of gear would make. However, with smaller numbers and smaller health bars, each little piece of gear you get feels so different. You can definitely notice the difference in your damage from one level to the other. And I think that's really made the whole leveling process feel so much more enjoyable. Overall, it's obviously not a perfect system, no system is, but I think this is one of the biggest changes that needed to happen to World of Warcraft moving into the Shadowlands, and more than anything, it signals that they're actually looking to engage with new players, and this is definitely something Blizzard needed to do a while ago. We've seen players, bleeding from the game with no real reason for new players to join it. Well, there are systems in place now to convince, new players and friends of players to come in and have a better experience with World of Warcraft. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Is this something you're going to check out, or is it more something that you'll kind of listen to on the sidelines and see how it turns out, like an MMO experiment of sorts? Either way though, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.